I was once saved from the dead by Xianxia. Before I was recognized and returned to the palace. He taught me to read and write and practice martial arts, treating me with utmost kindness, until I killed the woman he had loved for years. To avenge her, Xianxia became my prince consort. He spent years plotting to turn everyone against me, torturing me in every way before finally throwing me back into that pile of corpses. Xianxia said that the greatest regret of his life was saving me back then. So, upon being reborn, I quickly climbed out of the pile of corpses on my own. Later, I heard that it had rained heavily that day. The once arrogant Xianxia, disregarding the filth and mud, knelt half-bent in the pile of corpses, digging until his hands were covered in blood. All to find a little beggar. Chapter 1. Xianxia still killed me. On the anniversary of Su Yun's death, he used the dagger stained with Su Yun's blood, stabbing it into my body bit by bit. He then twisted it viciously, his eyes red with hatred, asking, "Why did you kill Ai Yun?" Xianxia had asked this question many times. I had answered. I said I didn't. But Xianxia didn't believe me. After all, everyone knew that the princess, who had been found in the countryside, was deeply in love with the young marquis. Unable to force the young marquis to marry her, she killed the woman he loved out of hatred. And now, Xianxia was asking this question merely to find an excuse to tighten his grip on the dagger. His hands trembled violently, so much so that even I could feel it. Yet this man, who had previously broken my limbs and tortured me in every way, had never shown the slightest mercy. So I smiled at Xianxia again. Xianxia, what are you afraid of? Now that he is the grand tutor of the new dynasty, killing an unloved princess of the former dynasty is as easy as breathing. And all of this is merely his preparation to avenge Su Yan. Xianxia clenched his lips tightly and suddenly let go of my hand. He let me fall into the pile of corpses and once again became expressionless. "Shi Cheng," Xianxia called out to me, looking down on me. "The thing I regret most is saving you back then. I died, but it felt like I wasn't completely dead." So I saw Xianxia return and set fire to my former princess's mansion. Everyone praised Xianxia for his noble sacrifice, saying that the remnants of the previous dynasty deserved to die. Xianxia remained calm throughout, until he saw the empress by the new emperor's side. Weiji brother, Su Yuan, who had been resurrected, called out to him in the same intimate manner as before. Xianxia stared at her, unable to tear his gaze away for a long time. I heard Su Yan explain to Xianxia with a tone of apology, saying that the former emperor was depraved and tyrannical, leaving the people in dire straits. She had no choice but to frame Xianxia. After all, he was a man of great talent, and the new emperor had already intended to recruit him. But the Xin family had been hereditary earls for generations. How could they so easily betray their country? So she set the fire. "This is all my fault. Weiji brother." Su Yan tightly grasped Xianxia's hand, her almond-shaped eyes brimming with tears, looking pitifully charming. "Whatever Weiji brother wants in the future, I will compensate you." The words carried a hint of ambiguity. I watched Xianxia remain silent for a long time. After a moment, he replied in a hoarse voice, "All right." Su Yan immediately broke into a smile and said in a sweet voice, "Weiji brother is so kind." Weiji brother was indeed kind. I couldn't help but think. So Xianxia truly loved Su Yan. He had always despised deception. I once deceived him on his birthday, just to give him a surprise. But that day, Xianxia had a cold expression, so I didn't even give him his birthday gift. It turned out that Xianxia could back down. But not for me. I should have been dead. But when I opened my eyes again, I was lying in that pile of corpses. The stench of decaying corpses mixed with the smell of blood, overwhelming me for a moment. I had become the beggar girl. No. 19 again. Not the Princess Shirong I had become later. Sure, Gio. The thing I regret most is saving you back then. Xianxia's voice, still filled with hatred, echoed in my ears. So I took a moment to compose myself, then endured the pain throughout my body and crawled out of the pile of corpses. Now that I had escaped on my own, I owed Xianxia nothing. I was actually very afraid of pain. But it seemed like I had been in pain all along. The northern regions were engulfed in endless warfare, and a great disaster struck, causing bandits to rise up. The old servant who had cared for me hid me in this pile of corpses before he died. But who would have thought that the bandits were so cautious, intending to burn the bodies to ashes? In my previous life, I panicked and fled, only to be discovered by the bandits. It was Xianxia who saved me. He saved me. But in the end, he killed me. All I wanted was to live. So I gritted my teeth and carefully crawled over one corpse after another. But my luck was truly terrible. I escaped the bandits and avoided Xianxia, only to collide with Xianxia, Xianxia's sworn enemy and one of the most notorious troublemakers in the capital. There's actually a filthy little cat hiding here. The young man in fine robes sat atop his horse, looking down on me with a smirk, playing with his horsewhip. But the moment I saw Xianxia, a familiar yet unfamiliar voice suddenly rang out. At least she's a girl. You must bury her properly and not treat her with disrespect. The young general removed his crimson cloak and covered my battered body. He built a grave for me, giving me a place to rest in peace. That was the scene after my death. Back then, for Xianxia, I caused Xianxia no end of trouble. Yet in the end, it was this man who left me with the last shred of dignity. So I felt that perhaps I had been lucky after all. Because I had met Xianxia. You have the courage of a kitten, it's of no use. Seeing me staring at him in shock, Xianxia seemed to think I was scared. So he raised his horsewhip to scare me. But there was a bag of silver at my feet. Take the money and get out of my way. The pain throughout my body made it almost impossible for me to stand. So I decided to take a gamble. A corner of the bright red cloak hanging from the horse's back caught my attention, and I clutched it tightly. Xianxia instinctively lowered his whip. Save me, please. My voice was hoarse and barely audible. I had only enough strength left to say those words. But I desperately wanted to live. Before losing consciousness, I faintly heard Xianxia roar in anger. This is the 1,000 taels of silver I spent to buy. 1,000 taels of silver? He had been duped, this fabric wasn't worth that much. I couldn't help but think about it in my daze. Xianxia had indeed picked me up and brought me back. In his words, I had dirted the clothes he had bought for 1,000 taels of silver. I had to compensate him. Thus, I became a lowly maid in his service. But what was more important was that Xianxia suspected I had a connection with Xianxia. It was said that it rained heavily that day. The usually arrogant young marquis, Xin Xiaoho, disregarded the mud and filth, kneeling half-bent in the pile of corpses, digging until his hands were covered in blood. He even personally shot and killed those bandits. All for the sake of finding a little beggar. When Xianxia was telling me this, he couldn't help but stroke his chin and scrutinize me from head to toe. Then he asked directly, "Was he looking for you?" Though he asked me, his tone was certain. After all, I was the only one who survived in that pile of corpses. But I wouldn't admit it. I just smiled weakly. With the pathetic confidence of a pig that doesn't fear boiling water, I don't know. Xianxia snorted disdainfully. But he didn't press further. I became Xianxia's bodyguard. Because I discovered that a bodyguard's wages were higher than a maid's. And I needed to pay off my debts. Xianxia didn't believe I could fight. In his words, a person as small as a cat would be blown away by the wind. At most, you could punch someone in the chest or kick their calf. You probably wouldn't even dare to kill a chicken. Until I pinned Xianxia to the ground, pressed a sword against his neck, and told him in a serious tone. I'm really good at fighting. Hiring me won't be a loss for you. So Xianxia lay on the ground, questioning the meaning of life. Actually, in my previous life, after being picked up by Xianxia, I was discovered to have a talent for martial arts. Xianxia also said I would make a very useful weapon. If I hadn't been recognized by the imperial palace later, I would probably have been trained as a secret guard in the Marquis's mansion. I'm not very smart. I have difficulty reading and writing, and I'm not good at needlework. But I put my heart into learning martial arts. At that time, I wanted to protect Xianxia, but Xianxia wanted me to protect someone else. I looked at the knife in my hand and felt a little dazed. But I couldn't help thinking optimistically that things were pretty good now. At least I can choose who I want to protect now. Xianxia stood up, muttering curses under his breath. He couldn't beat me, so he could only rely on his status to intimidate me. Where did all the food I fed you go? You've been here for so long and you're still as skinny as a cat. People would think I've been abusing you. Before he could finish, Xianxia narrowed his eyes and jumped up suddenly. Then he exclaimed with feigned indignation. Admit it! You're just trying to make people think I'm abusing you. Look at you, acting like a wooden doll. But inside you're full of tricks and schemes. I blinked a few times before finally catching up to Xianxia's train of thought. So I explained to him seriously. No. It's because I can't gain weight. I've explained this many times before. But no one believes me. But I still want to say it. What if? Xianxia froze. He was someone who was used to speaking without thinking. He probably didn't expect someone to actually explain themselves for something he said offhand. Xianxia paused. His expression complicated. You believe me? I nodded. Then shook my head. Perhaps because of the debt I owed him from my previous life. I subconsciously didn't want Xianxia to misunderstand me. So Xianxia looked at me, scratched his head, sighed deeply, and looked a bit troubled. This is bad. How did I end up with such a fool? I corrected him. I just don't like to lie. Xianxia nodded randomly, indicating he understood. But from then on, my food always had a faint bitter taste of medicine. I didn't understand medicine, but I had heard in the palace in my previous life that some prominent families would give their guards medicine to control them. I suppose Xianxia doesn't trust me either. I wasn't too upset about it. Well, maybe a little bit. But I dared not let myself feel too disappointed. Until, after some time, I noticed that my body showed no signs of illness. I even rarely caught a cold. I went to ask Xianxia. You still have the nerve to ask? Xianxia pretended not to hear me at first. But after I asked him repeatedly, he couldn't help but glare at me angrily. He then looked away in disgust. My precious medicine could turn a dog into a pig. But you, after being fed for so long, are still as skinny as a beggar on the street. He said the last sentence very quietly. But I have good hearing. So I understood. Oh. So those herbs were meant to nourish my body. I bit my lip and told Xianxia seriously. Those herbs are a waste on me. I just wanted to find a way to repay Xianxia's kindness. But it seems like I'm only accumulating more debt. I don't want to go back to that ruthless palace. But I didn't have the money to repay the herbs. Xianxia didn't want to hear this. So he glared at me. What do you mean? A waste? When I first found you, you were sick all the time. Now you can fight 4 of my guards by yourself. This proves that I'm a good master. Go back and tell my parents that I'm a capable man. I didn't say a word, but I was thinking about how I could pay back this debt. Xianxia probably guessed what I was thinking. So he scoffed. You wouldn't be thinking that I'm a sucker, would you? I looked up at Xianxia and nodded. This young master of the Jiang family was famous throughout Yongzhou for being a sucker. For example, The cloak he bought for 1,000 taels of silver was actually made by a poor, unknown embroideress who couldn't even afford the doctor's fees. Xianxia was so angry he laughed. You can't even lie about cursing your master in your heart. You really are a block of wood. Though he was scolding me, his eyes were filled with laughter. Until I added, my life isn't worth much. That silver could buy many people like me. In my previous life, Xianxia had taken me back and sought a doctor to examine my body. So I knew he had spent a lot of silver. I wanted to live, but I couldn't owe anyone too much. When what you owe exceeds what you can repay, living becomes a luxury. Especially since Xianxia's kindness toward me all came with a price tag. I had already been taken advantage of. Then I saw the smile fade from Xianxia's face. After a moment, he tugged at the corner of his mouth. In a mocking tone, he whispered, "That's why I hate this world that treats human life like grass." This world is indeed a place where human life is as worthless as grass. Massacres are everywhere, and life is the least valuable thing. I watched Xianxia in silence, feeling that there was a kindness in him that didn't fit into this world. This wasn't a good thing. But it didn't matter. I would protect Xianxia no matter what. He dared not kill. So I would kill for him. Xianxia hadn't intended to wait for my response. He thought for a moment, then suddenly smiled and said, "Since you're so eager to repay your debt, then help me with something." "All right." I agreed without hesitation. Xianxia returned to his usual carefree demeanor. The momentary heaviness I had felt earlier seemed like a figment of my imagination. Xianxia had come to Yongzhou to visit his maternal grandfather. He encountered Xianxia again on his way back to the capital. The two groups of people crossed paths, and I should have avoided him. But then, stray soldiers blocked the way, and black-clad assassins intercepted us. Xianxia cursed. It must be that scoundrel Xianxia who brought them here. Xianxia firmly believed that he was well-liked by everyone, and no one in the capital or Yongzhou would dare to harm him. He told me to stay in the carriage and not move, saying that it wasn't proper for a girl to get involved in fighting. I didn't say a word, but I clenched the knife in my hand tightly. The enemy was clearly well prepared. Xianxia cursed Xianxia while running to save him. A long sword was thrust toward Xianxia. Xianxia, who was being protected by Xianxia, clearly saw it but stood there indifferently without uttering a word to warn him. Until I stepped in front of Xianxia. The long sword pierced his shoulder, but the bandit's head was severed by me. This was the simplest and most effective method. But blood still splattered onto Xianxia's clothes. I heard that this outfit was quite expensive. I looked at Xianxia's suddenly darkened expression and instinctively shrank my neck, stammering, "Actually, I was trying to protect you." "Who taught you to use such a reckless method to protect others? One that harms yourself as much as it harms the enemy?" Xianxia dragged me back, his voice almost grinding his teeth. He seemed to want to say something else, but was interrupted by Xianxia's urgent voice. "Are wrong." Xianxia's voice trembled as he stared intently at me. There was a hint of joy at having something back. Xianxia rarely showed such raw emotions in front of me. He had the arrogance of a nobleman deep down, even though he usually hid it well. To him, I was just a beggar he had saved from the dead. So Xianxia had always been stingy with his trust toward me. But now, Xianxia was standing right in front of me. His eyes were red, and he struggled to suppress his emotions. "I found you." He didn't hide his unusual behavior at all. The aloof young Marquis of Shen shouldn't have gone out of his way to find a beggar outside Yongzhou City. The gentleman praised by everyone in the capital shouldn't have turned a blind eye when his savior was in danger. Only Xin Taifu, who later endured humiliation and became the emperor's son-in-law, and then helped the new emperor overthrow the old dynasty. I suddenly remembered Xianxia's response to Su Yan, "Good." So I instinctively took a half-step back, only to be blocked by Xianxia. Xianxia's body stiffened for a moment. "I am If you want to acknowledge our relationship, we can discuss it later. Xianxia suddenly interrupted, his expression unusually cold. He led me toward the carriage, roughly pushing aside Xianxia, who was blocking the way, and casually added, "What kind of grudge do you have? Blocking the path like that, people might think the young marquis is intentionally obstructing the way, punishing the young lady to make her suffer more." His tone was casual and nonchalant. But when I looked at Xianxia, I saw him clenching his lips tightly, his eyes filled with a cruelty I had never seen before. For a moment, I felt as though I was seeing the invincible young general who would one day dominate the battlefield. Xianxia was knocked off balance. I didn't know which word Xianxia had said that had hit a nerve. His face suddenly lost all color, looking paler and weaker than I did as an injured person. He stared blankly at my back, his lips trembling slightly before he spoke in a very low voice. I didn't. But his words held no persuasive power. I couldn't help but glance at Xianxia, thinking to myself that he was good at putting on an act. He clearly despised me. Yet now he was pretending to be deeply concerned about me. But why had he come to find me? I didn't owe him anything. You've set your sights on that fair-faced boy? Xianxia suddenly blurted out. He sneered. Your taste is truly abysmal. Seeing me look at him in confusion, Xianxia grew even more irritated, rubbing his forehead before shoving me into the carriage. He growled at me. I'll settle this with you later. Before getting into the carriage, I caught a glimpse of him glancing down at his own body, then smirking in satisfaction before whispering, that scrawny little body of his would faint from a single punch from me. I wonder what you see in him. You're truly an ignorant blockhead. His tone was vicious. I didn't like Xianxia at all. I whispered to myself. All I wanted was to survive. Xianxia said he was sent by my mother to find me. The way he acted when he first saw me seemed like a mistake. He composed himself and smiled gently at me. I'm here to take you home. I looked at Xianxia and faintly recalled that in my previous life, I had been waiting for those words. I stayed at the Xin mansion for a year and a half before being taken into the imperial palace. But there were simply too many princes and princesses in the palace. And I was the most inconspicuous one. The palace was a place where people were devoured, and the princess's mansion was cold and desolate. I kept thinking about when Xianxia would come to take me back. But I waited for a very long time, only to have Xianxia burst into my princess's mansion with a sword, his eyes bulging as he demanded, "Why did you kill Ayu?" That day, I nearly died at the hands of someone who couldn't fight. I had no home, and I couldn't wait for someone to come and take me home. Xianxia didn't say a word. To be precise, since the day I was injured, Xianxia hadn't spoken a single word to me. But now, his silence suddenly made me panic. So I instinctively grabbed Xianxia's sleeve. Just like the day we first met, when I grabbed the corner of his cloak and held it tightly. I asked him blankly, "You don't want me anymore?" The words came out, but they felt wrong. So I licked my dry lips and hurriedly added, "I still owe you the silver. And there are those herbs. And there's also that thing you asked me to do earlier that I haven't finished." My voice grew softer as I spoke, and I suddenly realized something. Although I wanted to repay Xianxia, it seemed like I had been nothing but a burden to him all along. Xianxia stared at me blankly. After a moment, he turned away and muttered under his breath, then couldn't help but raise his arm to cover his eyes. "You're such a stubborn piece of wood." Xianxia spoke very softly, but I still heard him. I watched as the tips of his ears, hidden beneath his black hair, gradually turned red. He then pretended to cough casually. "She doesn't want to go with you." His expression carried a hint of pride. I had thought Xianxia would insist a little more. But this man only stared intently at my hand pulling Xianxia's sleeve, the light in his eyes fading bit by bit. Finally, he said in a hoarse voice, All right. This was completely unlike Xianxia's nature. I instinctively felt that Xianxia would not give up so easily. After all, he needed a reward. A reward for finding the royal bloodline. Marquis Xian was known for favoring his concubines and destroying his wives. Although Xianxia was only a minor marquis, there were many eyes in the marquis's mansion, both open and hidden, watching him closely. In his previous life, Xianxia had used this reward to secure his position and had almost married the woman he loved. Now that he had another chance, he would only be more skilled. So I grew vigilant. Xianxia noticed the caution in my eyes. His body, which seemed unsteady, swayed slightly, and his face turned pale, almost ghostly. His usually proud and straight back was almost bent over. He coughed heavily but forced a gentle smile toward me. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters. But his eyes were red, as if he were about to cry at any moment. Xianxia had fallen ill. Xianxia didn't want to go with him, but Xianxia insisted on following him even though he was ill. In the end, it was his attendant who came to ask Xianxia. Xianxia knew it was for me, so he sent someone to ask my opinion. This man was still angry with me, even going through others to speak. I thought about it and took the opportunity to approach him during a break. I started with an honest, I was wrong. Humph. Xianxia smiled without any warmth. It's rare. Finally realized the sin you committed around noon 4 days ago? I belatedly realized that he was referring to when I was injured. So I touched my shoulder, which was still throbbing, and quietly said, What do you have to say? I shouldn't have let myself get hurt. Then Xianxia sighed heavily. Forget it. He muttered to himself. Why should I be angry with a piece of wood? Xianxia stretched lazily. He leaned against the tree, tilted his head, and smiled at me. Then he said, But I always have a way to make this piece of wood bloom. Wood can't bloom. I wanted to argue. But in that moment, I believed Xianxia's words. So I asked him, Are you this kind to everyone? During the time I'd been with Xianxia, I'd noticed that he was different from the people of Kyoto. He seemed to get along with everyone, whether they were scholars, farmers, merchants, or even beggars on the street. He could strike up a conversation with them. Xianxia was taken aback by my question. He pretended to think for a moment. Then his brows relaxed. Of course. Otherwise, why do you think I have friends all over the world? You have to give to receive. He said that. But in that moment, I felt a profound and sorrowful loneliness emanating from Xianxia. It was a loneliness that set him apart from everyone else. How strange. But he quickly changed the subject. Would I suddenly miss home? Your home in Kyoto? Xianxia paused, then smiled. Of course. But I sensed he was lying. On the day we parted, Xianxia came looking for me. Arung. He called out to me, then coughed heavily. He was very sick, and 2 patches of unhealthy red appeared on his pale face. After calling me, Xianxia didn't say anything. He just looked at me quietly, with a hint of expectation in his eyes that was very easy to catch. Xianxia's body had been ruined by the dirty affairs of the Marquis's mansion. He found someone to cure my body, so I also thought of a way to remove the poison from his body. I once climbed a cliff to pick a medicinal herb for him, breaking my arm in the process. Yet I still delivered it to him with great enthusiasm. But at that time, Xianxia blamed me for not following Suyun, claiming it was my fault she had been injured during that period. Later, the herb said to revive the dead and restore bones to flesh was taken by Suyun, even though she had only suffered minor superficial injuries. Xianxia truly loved Suyun deeply. I thought to myself, then walked past Xianxia without changing my expression. Who only wanted to survive, could not hold the knife meant for revenge. The sharp blade sliced through Xianxia's skin, the blood red and blinding. I snapped back to my senses and instinctively tried to pull the knife back. But Xianxia grabbed the blade and slowly pushed it into his left shoulder. His face, already pale, turned deathly white. Was it because he found you first? Xianxia was clearly smiling, but his expression seemed on the verge of tears. He struggled to suppress the tremor in his voice, but I went looking for you that day too. I wanted to take Ayu home, I promised her I would bring her back. But I couldn't find her. I searched for a very long time. I even killed those people. But none of them knew where my Ayu was. Xianxia seemed to be in a trance. He approached me, his hands tightly gripping the knife. Blood dripping down. I released my grip on the knife without expression and took a few steps back to avoid his outstretched hand. Xianxia froze in place. After a moment, he asked me in a voice tinged with hurt but more confusion. Why didn't you wait for me? The question was oddly phrased. So I looked at Xianxia. It was you who told me that the thing you regretted most was saving me back then. That's why I risked my life to crawl out of that pile of corpses on my own. Xianxia, I owe you nothing. Xianxia opened his mouth, then struggled to force out the words. I'm sorry. I shook my head. Actually, you don't need to act like this in front of me. I wasn't dead back then. I saw Su Yan, and I heard what she said to you. She may have deceived you, but you forgave her. Xianxia probably didn't expect me to have such an experience. His breathing grew heavier, but the light in his eyes began to flicker. Almost urgently, he asked, what happened later? Did you see what happened later? Why was there a later? I interrupted in confusion. Isn't this enough? You burned down my princess's mansion, became the revered minister Shen, and Su Yan is now the empress, who will compensate you in every way. This is what I saw. Then the light dimmed little by little, almost to the point of death. So this is my punishment? How cruel! How cruel! Xianxia wept, his voice choked with emotion. Someone was calling my name in the distance. I glanced at Xianxia, who was barely standing, then thought for a moment and said, actually, I wanted to kill you, but I'm more afraid of dying. I didn't know if Xianxia heard me, because he was just lowering his head, torturing himself by stabbing the knife into his left shoulder, then looking up at me and smiling. Aao is also injured, this way we are more suited for each other. He seemed to whisper, I am delighted by you. But I felt Xianxia had gone mad. Xianxia brought me back to the general's mansion. Actually, confessing to Xianxia wasn't wise. But I gave up on myself and thought that if I was going to be taken back to the palace anyway, I might as well leave the reward for Xianxia. Perhaps it could offset some of my debts. But I waited day after day at the general's mansion. No one from the palace came. But I heard that the young marquis of the Shen family had broken off his relationship with the girl he had long admired. I also heard that the young man she had been in love with was accused of treason. If given another chance, Xianxia would have pushed Su Yan to her death. I heard that the Miss Su begged outside the marquis's mansion for a long time. But Xianxia didn't even glance at her. When Xianxia said this, he couldn't help but glance at me. Then he lectured me. Wooden head. You have to be more discerning when choosing a man in the future. Don't just look at his good looks. You have to consider his personality, character, physique, everything. I nodded slowly, thinking that Xianxia was absolutely right. I didn't realize how shocking his words were to an ordinary woman. Whatever Xianxia said, I believed. And clearly, this made him very happy. Until Zhang's second eldest sister's angry voice suddenly rang out, Qing Keir, you're corrupting Ajo again. Qing Keir was Xianxia's childhood nickname. It was said that when Xianxia was born, he was as small as a sparrow and exceptionally frail, nearly losing his life on several occasions. Perhaps inspired by the folk saying that a humble name brings good fortune. The general's wife had called him Xianxia for years, hoping he would survive. When Xianxia heard his childhood name, he jumped up in anger, shouting, "I told you not to call me that anymore." Xianxia felt the name was too feminine and didn't suit his handsome, sturdy appearance. Jiang Heir, his older sister, sneered, twisted Xianxia's ear, then turned to me and said, "He's always been a smart aleck. Just listen and don't follow his bad example." I glanced at Xianxia, who was grimacing but clearly smiling beneath it, and nodded. But when Xianxia wasn't looking, I silently mouthed to Xianxia, "I know." So Xianxia patted my head and praised me. "Ajio is so obedient." Xianxia was overjoyed. The people in the general's mansion treated me very well. I guess that Xianxia must have said or done something. But Xianxia said he hadn't. He asked, "Why can't it simply be because you're a good person? Father said you have a natural talent for martial arts and are down to earth, making you a rare gem. Mother said you're obedient and listen well. She can't find anyone in the mansion to talk to. But you're the only one who listens to her carefully. Since you came to the mansion, Mother has been much happier." Second sister also said that if she had a daughter, she would want her to be just like you. So, wooden head, why can't it be because you deserve it? I didn't answer. But I thought to myself, if I'm really that good, why didn't anyone like me in my previous life? No. Perhaps there was one. Xianxia's eldest sister, the current Empress Jiang. She was the only one who protected me in the palace. It was she who told me, "Little you, if you can escape, flee this palace that devours its own." But I did not escape. Nor did Empress Jiang. The once proud daughter of a general's mansion died in that filthy harem. She died under a false accusation. The Jiang family was accused of treason, and Jiang Guifei was accused of corrupting the harem. Later, the charges against the Jiang family were dropped. The emperor shed a few tears, bestowed various titles and rewards, and the matter was swept under the rug. Thinking of this, my body stiffened instantly. The things from my previous life that had been forgotten for some reason came flooding back, and I felt as though I had been plunged into an ice cellar. At that moment, Xianxia was looking down at me and said, "My elder sister cannot leave the palace." So she had some small trinkets and fabrics sent to the mansion. They have already been delivered to my courtyard. "Let me take you there." Xianxia. I suddenly grabbed Xianxia's arm, but the words stuck in my throat. I was afraid. Afraid that if I said those words, I would be treated as a demon. I had once seen a villager who had supposedly come back from the dead being dragged away by others and burned alive. But in reality, the so-called resurrection was merely a misdiagnosis by the doctor. "What's wrong?" Xianxia turned his head to look at me, his gaze as calm as ever. So I suddenly fell silent. I told myself that this was Xianxia, who had done so much for me. This was the general's mansion, which had been so kind to me. So I heard myself speak, my voice rough. I once had a dream. I still dared not tell Xianxia that I was the one who had been resurrected. I could only invent a dream and strain my brain trying to recall what had happened that year. It all began when one of General Zhang's subordinates defected and falsely accused the general's mansion of colluding with the enemy and betraying the country. Empress Jiang was deeply favored by the emperor, and General Jiang, who commanded a large army and enjoyed the people's support, had become a thorn in the side of those in power. The general's mansion was bound to fall. This was told to me by an old nurse who was on her deathbed. That deputy officer was personally bound and brought there by Xianxia. At the time, I had gone to see Xianxia and caught a glimpse of him from afar. That man has a scar on his left cheek and a large black mole on his chin. His surname is Zhang. I tried to describe the so-called dream in greater detail. There was also a maid named Lianxin by Jiang Guifei's side. She wasn't a good person. She was the Empress's confidant and later falsely accused Jiang Guifei of. Before I could finish, I suddenly stopped. I felt like I had said too much. And it didn't sound like a dream anymore. So I bit my lip and cautiously looked up at Xianxia, even though it's just a dream. I feel like it's about to happen. My voice trembled slightly. I didn't know if Xianxia would believe me. So I started to think wildly about what I would do if Xianxia didn't believe me and how I would resolve the future crisis. I understand. But Xianxia just hummed in response. Then raised his hand to stroke my head. I'll investigate these people. You stay at the mansion and wait for my news. This time it was my turn to be taken aback. You believe me? Of course I believe you. Xianxia suddenly broke into a smile. Then sighed as if joking, if I didn't believe you. How hard would that be for you? Those few words made my eyes well up. For a moment, I thought how wonderful it would have been if I had met Xianxia first in my previous life. He would have believed me. And I wouldn't have ended up like this. Why are you crying? Xianxia suddenly became flustered. He frantically searched for a handkerchief. Stammering. I was just joking. If you don't like it, I won't say it anymore. His voice grew softer and softer. Finally, Xianxia shut his mouth and took out the snack bag he carried with him, asking me cautiously, "Want some?" I didn't know when Xianxia had started carrying around some sweet snacks. He said that the guards following him were skinny and small, and even he, as their master, was looked down upon because of them. I nodded, but my eyes were still red. I couldn't tell if it was because I was afraid of being discovered or because of what Xianxia had said. But Xianxia sighed in relief. He lay on the recliner, his hands behind his head, quietly watching the sky. When I finished eating, he remained in the same position. Would. He called me, turning his head to look at me with a smile in his eyes. I actually really want to go home. You're already at the general's mansion. This isn't my home. Xianxia smiled and pointed to the sky. My home is very far away. Perhaps I'll never be able to return there in this lifetime. I was taken aback and blurted out. Could you be an immortal? Xianxia was so amused that he covered his stomach and laughed. Well, you could say that. He tilted his head. After all, people from where I come from can fly to the heavens and dive into the seas. To you, we are indeed like immortals. We are the same. Xianxia stood up. He seemed to want to pinch my cheek but then remembered something and curled his fingers. In the end, he simply leaned down and gently touched my face with the cool back of his hand as a comforting gesture. He looked at me seriously and whispered, "So, kitty, don't be afraid." Xianxia always called me a kitty. A weak and timid kitty, but actually extremely delicate. And made of wood. Xianxia disappeared for a while. When he returned, I heard that an adjutant in the military camp had been beheaded. He was accused of treason, with irrefutable evidence. Things are a bit tricky with my older sister. After all, she's connected to the Empress. Xianxia pinched the bridge of his nose and comforted me. But don't worry. I'll keep an eye on her as well. I felt reassured. Wooden one. You saved us. Xianxia smiled, his eyes sparkling. Seeing this, I felt a rare blush rise to my cheeks. Later, he became busy again and didn't want to take me with him. So Jiang sister took me out of the mansion to play. Then I saw Su Yan. This was the first time I had seen her since my rebirth. The memories of the new empress, who had been pampered and elegant, gradually faded away. The Su Yan I saw now was shrouded in a gloomy aura. When she saw me, her gaze was cold and unsettling. But this time, I didn't return with Xianxia, so Su Yan shouldn't have recognized me. For some reason, I suddenly felt a pang of anxiety. Then Su Yan suddenly smiled. She stood there, silently mouthing the words. So it's you. That night, I had a dream. To be precise, it shouldn't have been just a dream. I saw Xianxia return to the pile of corpses, frantically searching for my body. He searched for a long time, his hands covered in blood, yet he never stopped. Until Su Yan came to find him and asked what he was looking for. Xianxia remained silent for a long time. The young Grand Tutor, tall and elegant, had mud stains on his sleeves, and blood trickled down his palms. Nothing, he finally murmured after a while. I think I accidentally lost something. If it's lost, it's lost. Su Yan sighed in relief upon hearing this. She wanted to pull Xianxia closer, but the scent emanating from his body deterred her. She could only smile sweetly and say, "Whatever regr wants, Yan will find it for you." Xianxia said, "All right." But I clearly saw the surging yet suppressed hatred in his eyes. Who was he hating? Later, I found out that Xianxia hated Su Yan, but he hated himself even more. He had calculated every step to bring Su Yan down from her position as empress to a prostitute ridden by thousands. Then, when Su Yan was filled with hope, waiting for him to appear, he cruelly plunged her back into despair. He severed Su Yan's limbs and locked her in a dark, windowless dungeon. Everything Xianxia had done to me was now being done to Su Yan. At first, Su Yan begged him, saying she had her reasons. But later she cursed him wildly. She mocked Xianxia, "Are you avenging her now?" But Xianxia, even if I schemed against you back then, doesn't that make you wrong too? It was you who followed the Dog Emperor's orders to find her and send her to the palace. It was you who made her the Dog Emperor's concubine to secure your position in the Marquis's mansion. Xianxia, I only handed you a knife. But it was you who killed her. Now you dare to say that you loved her? Even a fool would find that disgusting. I listened quietly, then suddenly understood. So Xianxia had always known my true identity. No wonder he asked me back then. Aya will also help me like this in the future, right? Xianxia remained silent. Only when he heard the word disgusting did his face suddenly turn pale. Aya isn't disgusting, he murmured softly, unsure if he was speaking to himself or to someone else. She doesn't know anything, and I won't let her find out. But she's already dead. Su Yan screamed. You killed her with your own hands. You even left her body unburied. Yes. Xianxia suddenly laughed. He lowered his head and spoke in a very soft voice. So I won't spare myself either. Xianxia had gone mad. I suddenly recalled the words Xianxia had been interrupted by me that day, realizing it belatedly. Oh. So he wanted me to see this. Xianxia returned. It had only been a short while since we last saw each other. Yet it felt like ages. I had been following him closely. Until Xianxia teased me. You must have developed feelings for me, right? I didn't say anything. Just quietly watched Xianxia. I watched as the smile on his face slowly faded, and a flush suddenly appeared on his sunburned cheeks. He scratched his hair and stammered. You really like me, don't you? Before I could answer, he started talking to himself again. Actually, it's normal for you to like me. After all, I'm good-looking, have a good personality, and am trustworthy. Even a piece of wood could fall for me. By the end of his sentence, Xianxia's tone carried a hint of self-satisfaction, if it weren't for his face growing even redder. But I didn't know what it meant to like someone. So I asked Xianxia, what does it mean to like someone? Xianxia said he was infatuated with me. Once was after I died. Once was after I was reborn. But he killed me. His infatuation only made me feel worse. Xianxia sensed something was off and immediately grew wary. Did someone say that to you? I didn't want to lie to Xianxia, so I nodded. Which little brat took advantage of me being away to steal your affections? Xianxia was so angry he rolled up his sleeves and cursed. If I catch him, I'll hang him on the city wall for 3 or 4 days. His expression was quite comical, dispelling all the negative emotions I had felt from the dream. So I couldn't help but curve my eyes. Do you think he likes you? Xianxia followed up with a laugh. What do I think? I thought about it carefully and shook my head. He almost killed me, then told me he was wrong, saying he actually likes me. That can't possibly be love. Xianxia blurted out almost before he could stop himself. Perhaps fearing I didn't understand. He added, Chengxing really likes you. That brat never bothers with anyone else. Yet he goes out of his way to act cute and charming in front of you, thinking that's how he'll make you like him more. Chengxing is the son of Xianxia's second older sister. Xianxia snorted coldly but couldn't help but smile. That day, my second older sister's husband brought back pastries from the Lotus Pavilion for her in Chengxing. He thought the pastries were delicious, so he secretly hid a piece, waiting to give it to you. I recalled the day Chengxing brought me the pastries, and how he cried tearfully when he carefully unwrapped the handkerchief to find the pastries crushed. And I couldn't help but smile. Look, even children know that if you like someone, you should save the best pastries and find ways to please the person you like. There is no such thing in this world as hurting someone you love because of a misunderstanding or ignorance. If you are hurt in any way, then it is not true love. Xianxia propped himself up on his knees and looked straight at me. His eyebrows and eyes curved. Little Wood, remember this, if you yourself have never felt that affection, then it cannot be called love. I looked at the small reflection of myself in Xianxia's light-colored eyes. Seeing that familiar face, I couldn't help but smile with a lightness I had never felt before. So I awkwardly avoided his gaze and after a moment, whispered to Xianxia, I don't have a name. Like Xianxia, I nearly didn't survive my childhood. But I was far less fortunate than he was. Because I was born on the 19th day of the 12th lunar month. My mother casually named me 19. She didn't even give me a proper name. She believed I wouldn't live long. So there was no point in giving me a name. Later, I entered the palace. I was merely a girl brought in to serve as a human medicine for the emperor. So there was no need to waste time on a name. So I was called Shizhou. From beginning to end, I never had a name of my own. Xianxia froze, seemingly unable to process why I was saying this, until I cautiously asked him again. So, Xianxia, can you help me choose a name? He opened his mouth. I continued on my own, actually. I think the surname Jiang sounds nice. I looked at Xianxia, my tone tinged with a hint of hope I hadn't even noticed myself. Is that okay? Xianxia took a deep breath. He straightened up and teased. Are you sure? If you take my surname, you'll be my person. He seemed to have returned to his previous carefree demeanor, but his voice trembled slightly. I was confused. Aren't I your bodyguard? Doesn't that mean I'm his person? You're really a block of wood. Xianxia's breath caught for a moment. Then he muttered a low curse. Then he patted my head and coaxed. All right. I'll take this job. But naming someone is a big deal. I need to discuss it with my father, mother, and older sister. After all, we'll be family from now on. Family? My eyes lit up. And I smiled, biting my lip. I had a home. And I had finally found someone to take me home. But I still hadn't received the name Xianxia had chosen for me. An imperial edict arrived at the general's mansion, and I was taken to the palace. The emperor shed a few tears, gripped my hand, and pretended to be heartbroken, saying how much I had suffered over the years. Everything seemed to have returned to my previous life. But clearly, I had tried so hard to avoid it. I was trapped in the palace and began drinking those bitter medicines that were almost unbearable. The current emperor was obsessed with immortality. He feared death. So he needed a test subject for his elixirs. The sorcerer said the conditions for the test subject were stringent. And it had to be someone of his bloodline. Among all the princes and princesses in the palace, I was the only one who fit the criteria. So I was named Xianxia. But clearly, I was so close to having my own name. Empress Jiang came to see me. She bore a striking resemblance to Xianxia, especially in how she fed me. After all the effort I put into raising this little one. That bastard ruined him. Empress Jiang pinched my face, gritted her teeth for a moment, then softened and coaxed me. Eat one more piece. Look how skinny you've become. She didn't know about the poison testing, she just thought I couldn't adjust to life in the palace. She comforted me again. Once your princess's mansion is settled, I'll send Qing Ke to keep you company. Probably worried about causing trouble. The emperor ordered people to watch me closely. And even Jiang Guifei could only visit me occasionally. So I smiled at Jiang Guifei and nodded. All right. Just wait a little longer. I told myself. Once I leave the palace, everything will be fine. I went through this in my previous life, I just need to endure it a little longer. As I thought this, I couldn't help but find the medicine bitter and hard to swallow. I should have gotten used to it by now. But I remembered the medicine hidden in the food. I remembered the bag of candied fruits that Xianxia always carried with him. I thought, I still want Xianxia. I want him so much. I counted the days until I could leave the palace. But as the days passed, the emperor showed no signs of relenting and allowing me to go to the princess's mansion. And Jiang Guifei was also confined to the Shuijiang Hall and could not leave. The amount of medicine delivered each day grew increasingly larger. The emperor seemed to grow more impatient by the day. This sudden change unsettled me. It wasn't until a new concubine named Su Guiran arrived in the harem, favored by the emperor, that I realized the source of my unease. It was Su Yuan. Only then did I belatedly realize that Su Yuan must have known my true identity. After all, she had once been the person Xianxia trusted most. When Su Yan came to see me that day, I had just been forced to drink 2 bowls of medicine and was in excruciating pain. How pitiful. She looked at me with a hint of pity in her eyes that I couldn't understand. Xianxia hasn't come to see you. And the young master from the general's mansion can't come in either. You see, men are unreliable. People have to rely on themselves. I didn't really want to pay attention to Su Yan, but I had to admit that her last sentence was spot on. So I smashed the bowl and thrust the shards into Su Yan's chest. I do have to rely on myself. I whispered. So I'll have to take revenge myself. But the medicine was harmful to my body. So I used all my strength. But I only managed to give Su Yan superficial wounds and make her bleed a little. You mad woman! She screamed in pain. The palace attendants hurriedly pulled me away. I tilted my head to look at Su Yan. Her hair disheveled and her appearance disheveled. No longer the arrogant figure she had been earlier. And suddenly I laughed. I thought it was indeed because of Xianxia. I've become much bolder now. This is good. The palace was in chaos. The emperor suddenly fell seriously ill. And the position of crown prince had been vacant for a long time. Several princes were openly and secretly vying for the position. This was something that had never happened in my previous life. Soon after, the 3rd prince forced the emperor to abdicate. On the day of the palace coup, Xianxia found me. It was the first time I had seen him since I arrived in the capital. The usually dignified and proper young marquis now exuded a cold, murderous intent. But when he saw me, his expression suddenly softened into the familiar gentle smile I knew. He reached out his hand to me. Cautiously. I'll take you away. I sat there, quietly watching Xianxia. I watched his fingers twitch. Then he called me wrong again, sounding awkward. This place isn't safe, Xianxia said hoarsely, his eyes reddening. I'll take you away first. Once this is over, I'll send you back. He paused, then spoke each word with great difficulty. You can go wherever you want. But I don't want to go with you. I shook my head and said. Xianxia said he'd come to take me home. I believe him. So I'll wait for him. But it was clearly me who found you first. Xianxia took a few steps forward. His voice choked with emotion. Ain. People make mistakes. You can't deny me even the chance to make it up to you. Can you? How cruel would that be to me? So I thought. What Xianxia said earlier was indeed reasonable. He wouldn't hurt me because of his mistakes. But what if Xianxia can't find me? That would be so cruel to him. Xianxia's body suddenly stiffened. I smiled at him again. Don't call me wrong. I'm not called Shiyang. I have my own name. Name? Xianxia asked softly. Yes. My name is. I stopped mid-sentence. I realized with frustration that before I entered the palace, Xianxia hadn't told me my name yet. But the next moment, a voice filled with laughter took over. Sun Wan. Her name is Jiang Sun Wan. Xianxia had indeed come to fetch me. I was just going to fetch the antidote. But you beat me to it. Xianxia raised an eyebrow and tilted his chin toward me. What are you standing there for? Hurry over here. So I nearly skipped toward him. But Xianxia pulled me back. I instinctively tried to pull my hand away. But Xianxia held it tightly. Wrong. He stubbornly called me by that name. Staring at me without blinking. Don't you want me either? His voice was filled with pleading. He also had wounds on his body. Severe enough to reach the bone. I should hate Xianxia. But at that moment, I felt he was pitiful. So I thought for a moment and said, I heard you say you love me. Xianxia's body stiffened, and his grip on my hand loosened slightly. I continued, but someone else told me that if even I can't feel that love, then it's not real. You saved me, even if it was for your own reasons. But you let me live and even taught me martial arts. At least during that time. I was happy. But Xianxia, I still want to kill you. But you can't kill him. After all, he's now the second prince's right-hand man. The third prince forced the emperor to abdicate and rebelled. But the second prince saved the emperor and was rewarded. A major political drama. Xianxia walked over with a smile, gripping Xianxia's hand tightly and forcing him to let go. I heard the sound of bones breaking. Xianxia groaned softly. Then his arm dropped limply. I sighed regretfully. Never mind. I'm about to die. At this moment, Xianxia had calmed down. He looked deeply into my eyes. Then suddenly smiled. I won't dirty your hands. I felt a bit lost again. Why was he going to die again? He took an arrow meant for the second prince. The arrowhead was poisoned. And there's no antidote. Xianxia squeezed my hand and looked down at me, though I really don't want to say it. I must tell you, he traded his life to beg for your lifelong peace and happiness before the second prince. I thought you wouldn't say that. Xianxia tugged at the corner of his mouth. Xianxia sneered. His eyes challenging, I'm not like you. This time, Xianxia fell silent. But I won't thank you. I turned to look at Xianxia and whispered. Although you saved me, you also killed me. I'm afraid of pain. But you've been making me suffer all along. That's good. Xianxia coughed heavily. His sleeve stained with blood. He stared at me blankly and smiled. This is good. I looked away and tugged at Xianxia's sleeve. Trying to leave. I asked him again. What was the antidote you mentioned earlier? You're such a blockhead. Xianxia scolded me. Then handed me a porcelain bottle. You've been tested with poison for so long. You must have ingested a lot of it. You need the antidote. Here. Take it. I nodded. Contrary to my expectations, the antidote wasn't bitter at all, it was sweet. Just like a sugar pill. It was the sweetest thing I had tasted in a long time. So I couldn't help but take another bite. Is there more? I turned to ask Xianxia. But all I saw was a sea of red. I looked down in shock and noticed that the porcelain bottle was also stained with dark red blood. The bloodstains blended in with the color of the bottle, so I hadn't noticed them at first. Why are you so greedy? The wooden cat has turned into a little gluttonous cat? Xianxia was still laughing, but blood kept flowing from his mouth and nose. I stood there, a chill suddenly rushing up my heart. Xianxia. My voice trembled as my vision began to blur. I asked him, "Why are you bleeding?" Xianxia said it was due to the heat and dryness causing him to have a fever. He roughly wiped the blood off his face and comforted me. It's nothing. I'll just eat something to clear the heat and detoxify my body when I get back. But the sorcerer didn't give you an antidote. Xianxia emerged from the inner chamber. He glanced at Xianxia and lowered his eyes. He merely tested it on himself bit by bit before reformulating the antidote for you. If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Xianxia rolled his eyes, then softened his tone as he looked down at me. Don't cry. I'm not going to die. Besides, I've made the antidote once, I can make it again. He tried to wipe away my tears, but when he saw his own blood-stained hand, he reluctantly withdrew it. Finally, he fumbled around, trying to comfort me. Stop crying. You're breaking my heart. But this time, Xianxia only gave Xianxia a complicated look and didn't say a word. You're lying. My whole body was trembling. I dug my nails into the palm of my hand to gather the strength to continue. If you can mix it again. Why didn't you eat it first? Xianxia was speechless. After a moment, he sighed helplessly and smiled. You're usually so dull. How come you're so sharp now? Enough. I tried to speak, but he interrupted me. Xianxia took my hand and led me forward. I'll walk you out first. Don't worry. Evil deeds last 1,000 years. And I'm not going to die anytime soon. Besides, I've lived this long, I'm already tired of it. The last sentence. Xianxia whispered very softly. But Xianxia had lied to me. He had been wounded by an arrow. To prepare the antidote for me as quickly as possible, Xianxia had even increased the dosage. Now, the arrow wound and the poison were both taking effect. As we approached the palace gates, a large group of guards rushed forward. Their numbers far exceeded those Xianxia had brought with him. They were the third prince's men. I didn't know who had informed on us. But it didn't matter anymore. They surrounded us, waiting for a single command. Though I'm reluctant, I may have to break my promise. Xianxia gasped softly, but his face still bore a smile. But at least we're almost there. You just need to take that final step alone. I couldn't speak, only wiping the blood from his body over and over again. Enough. Xianxia grabbed my hand, smiling. A pretty little girl is getting all dirty. Speaking had become extremely difficult for him now. Xianxia pushed me gently outward and coaxed. You go first. I'll come find you later. But this time, I didn't believe Xianxia's words. He probably noticed something too. Sighing heavily. All right. It wasn't a waste for me to have been so kind to you earlier. Those 1,000 taels of silver were well spent. Even at this moment, he still had the nerve to joke around. They say the soul returns to its homeland. I can go home now. Aren't you happy for me? I knew what Xianxia meant by going home. So I remained silent and tried to pull him up again. Stay and talk to me. Xianxia held me back, looking at me with pleading eyes. A hint of petulance in his voice. We haven't seen each other in so long. Since there's no one around, let's talk properly. There were so many people around. Yet he insisted there was no one. My nose grew sore. And my voice choked up. What do you want to hear? Xianxia Legends' eyes lit up. And his expression brightened. Anything. For example, have you been bullied by anyone? If you have, tell me, and I'll avenge you. Or, has my older sister said anything to you? She's such a bad person. Always bringing up my shortcomings. Someone rushed forward first. Xianxia Legends wouldn't kill anyone. But now his knife was soaked in blood. He kept talking. But as he spoke, Xianxia Legends' voice grew softer and softer. So, taking advantage of his breath, I quickly picked Xianxia Legends up and tied us together tightly. What a rude little girl. Xianxia Legends could no longer hold the knife. He closed his eyes and smiled, humming softly. But who can blame me for liking just you? Xianxia Legends. I feared he might fall asleep. So I searched for words. What exactly do you want me to say? If I weren't killing someone, this might have been a good opportunity. What do you want to hear? Xianxia Legends perked up. He leaned close to my ear and whispered. I want to hear if Anwan really likes me. I killed someone who tried to rush forward and hurt Xianxia Legends. Then answered off-topic, Xianxia Legends. I've done what you wanted me to do. Long ago. Xianxia Legends asked me to do something for him. Then tell me why you're so desperate to keep living. All right. I had been searching for that reason. Now I had found it. So I spoke slowly and clearly. I want to walk from the south to the north. To see everything. Long before that, Jiang Guifei had mentioned that she had a mischievous younger brother. That brat can't sit still for a moment. He's always wanting to go out. And he keeps talking about walking from the south to the north. To see everything. Jiang Guifei said it with disdain. But her eyes were filled with laughter. She said she had heard many of her experiences from her brother. So I remembered it. But I'm cowardly. I need someone to accompany me. I'm also delicate. So the person accompanying me must be Xianxia Legends. It can only be Xianxia Legends. Xianxia Legends. I'm afraid of dying. But I'm even more afraid that you'll die first. Xianxia Legends was startled. Then laughed gloomily. That sounds great. It's the answer I like. But you're wrong about one thing. None of us will die. I murmured. The knife in my hand was already blunt. So I switched to another one. Wave after wave of people charged forward. Then wave after wave fell down. I didn't know how many people I had killed. I was just carrying Xianxia Legends on my back. Slowly making my way toward the palace gates. Xianxia Legends said he had always been a kite drifting outside this world. It was I who had shown him the direction of the string. His words were too mysterious for me to understand. But I knew I owed Xianxia Legends a lot of silver as his bodyguard. I had to take him home. The sky was beginning to lighten. I faintly heard what sounded like reinforcements arriving. And someone anxiously asking how I was doing. But my vision was obscured by a sea of blood. And I couldn't see clearly. Until something hard poked my face. I instinctively turned my head to look. This time I saw clearly. It was a flower blooming in the blood. A flower carved from wood. The wood has bloomed. Xianxia Legends' voice was so low it was almost inaudible. But it still carried a hint of a smile. Anwan. We're going home. Epilogue. Xianxia Legends was taken away by his master. He was a wandering Taoist priest who had also secured Xianxia Legends' soul when he was a child. When he saw me, the Taoist suddenly burst into laughter. I wondered why that boy's soul was so restless. It turns out he went to find you. This act of defying heaven and earth has indeed allowed him to find a way to achieve it. How rare! How rare! I understood the Taoist's words. And a bold guess began to form in my heart. But I wanted to hear it from Xianxia Legends' own mouth. When will I be able to see him again? Why do you want to see him? The old Taoist asked with a smile. This time I answered decisively, I am deeply in love with him. What if it's for a lifetime? Then I will wait for him for a lifetime. The old Taoist laughed even louder, then wait. My child! The old Taoist led Xianxia away. And I didn't know where they went. The Jiang family comforted me, saying that he had just gone out to play for a while. So I waited through the seasons. By the time I became a member of the Jiang family, I had become a fearless female general on the battlefield in place of Xianxia. The following spring, I went to the outskirts of Yongzhou City. What had once been a field of corpses was now a vast expanse of fertile land. I sat there, propping my cheek, watching quietly, but was splashed with mud by a group of children playing nearby. The family apologized nervously to me. I waved my hand to signal it was nothing. But after they left, I couldn't help but furrow my brows. This was the clothing Xianxia had personally selected for me, saying it matched him perfectly when I wore it. It seems I should return early. I sighed, but froze in my tracks as I turned around. A familiar voice rang out, tinged with a smile. Where did this dirty little kitten come from? You look rather pitiful. Blocking the path isn't good manners. Why not come home with this young master instead?